Welcome, Amy, to my startup founder podcast. A pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be on and excited for the conversations.
Yeah, no, I see that you're also a network builder, so it'll be interesting for us to talk about that and share ideas and what we've experienced trying to build our networks. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before we do go into that, do you mind just telling me a bit about your background? So what came before your current venture and you living in New York, and
Yeah,
how'd that happen? Yeah.
yeah, no, happy to share. So I grew up in Asia and I came to the US a couple years ago for college. And then I was actually the first person in my family to go study abroad. So I started as a professional like table tennis player when I was in the
Oh,
third.
wow.
So like my grandpa played competitively, so he tried to make everyone, get into it. So that's actually I think table tennis is really, really fast. So that's really helped me to it's like takes a second to react, adjust, and make decisions. So that mindset carry a lot into, buildings like my first, I would say like companies. So I built two companies before, all back in Asia. One is quite similar to what I'm building for Borderless. So at the time, the idea was I was very young, and I wanted to get a job at a Starbucks as a barista. And so I tried to apply and I obviously got rejected and was kind of concerned about my future. So I started this the first venture, which was more like a network for young professional who are looking to get internships or resources where they can build their professional soft skill. So we also hosted a lot of like curated events and built out a network of like over like 20,000 folks there. And after that, like I started like my second company with my best friends. So the idea came from we had our grandparents who lived in the rural area. So we built this product in the emergency space where you like click one button and you can actually get emergency services um, from the hospital in the rural area. And then after that, I came to the US and um, I was in consulting for a little bit. Was going the corporate route that every immigrant wanted to go. You make like a
Yeah.
six-figure jobs. And I thought it was like, that was the win. And then I think up until like end of 2024, I was actually thinking of joining a startup, more so starting like Borderless itself. And then I started, talking to a few of my founder friends who lives in the city, like learn what's going on in the ecosystem. Then, you kind of notice there's patterns where people like folks really crave for a curated space where they can actually meet other folks that are going through similar stages. So I started hosting like a couple of like very small events. The first one we started as like a series of workshops on like fundraising, go to markets, and we partner with a couple of like venture capital folks to like help let's say 15 founder fundraise. And then up until March 2025, that's when I started hosting the first like founder breakfast. And um we had like five, six founder friends. The idea was just to bring people into a space where I can actually have honest conversation. And so that's how kind of have it started. And then, it's been one of our signature types. And we went to SF end of last year, and this is how we started. And the journey's been fun.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so you really got in early on the networking event hosting stuff. So what age were you in Asia? And sorry, what country in Asia was it? Was it China or
Oh,
um yeah,
it was
Vietnam?
around
Okay,
like Southeast and then like Singapore, so we targeted like like the Southeast Asia regions. Yeah.
okay, the whole Southeast Asia region. And you said you hosted them in Singapore or
No, we hosted them in like different like developing countries, but the main one was like, Vietnam, and
yeah.
then we did a few in some other regions as well. Yeah. But those
Oh,
are
very
like
cool.
like it has like untapped talents and there's also the lack of resources. Yeah.
Yeah. And what age was that at? What like how old were you when you started your first venture?
I was pretty young. I think I was in high school, I would say, before I went to college, all these. Yeah.
You grew up so young with a very entrepreneurial spirit. How did you first have this idea and what made you decide to pursue it?
Yeah, honestly, it started with a feeling, as I told you, when I started catching up with a couple of my founder friends, and you see that there's a similar patterns that folks really want a curated space. There's so many things that are happening in the US ecosystem. And I wanted to join a startup more than just starting something. So when that happened, there was like I started getting into the ecosystem. I saw that there were a ton of events, conferences, networking opportunity, but then a lot of them feel very transactional, or like you would meet so many random people that you just exchange like a LinkedIn contacts or like, and then you never talk again. So like the idea of building a curated space and like meaningful relationship at the same time, like the most valuable conversations I had always like in the intimate setting where you actually like know who is in the room. And so it's like a dinner with five founders or like a coffee with someone, like building something similar. So those were like the moment where, people were honest about what were really happening, like what they're going through. And I can also, share with them what I'm going through. And I think that's where you kind of start building those, connections. I make so many, meaningful connections just by hosting curated events for founders. So then I just started experimenting a little bit. We started, as I said, like with the workshop. So it's more educational because you also notice like it's so hard for founders to fundraise or even to like sell, for example, and you so early and you don't know who to reach out to help. So the idea was to like bring people who've been there, like the VC folks, like the founder who sold the company before, things like that, to come into a room for like a small group of founders and help them out. That's kind of what we started with. And then I started hosting small, like curated event, more like, but like focus on like just conversations. Then that started with the breakfast, and then and then eventually we keep doubling down on the curation. And now our vision grew just beyond just like hosting events. I think like we want to build a more like curated infrastructure for like really ambitious founders um and bring them together as a space that they can actually have real conversations. Yeah, so it grew from that realizations, and I believe that the right room, when you put together the right people together, then the right room would change everything. A lot of magical things happens, and I've seen it, firsthand. So that's kind of how I went all in for Borderless.
Yeah, I agree with it does make a huge difference to curate the audience that's in a room. I mean, even just the general tech networking events where there's people from many different industries, like they're not all founders, they're not all from one industry. Even that felt very like the conversations felt so much more worthwhile than if I just went to, networked with random people on the street or at some other kind of at work because they're all there because they're open to network, right? There's already a filter going on when they sign up. Only someone that's open to talking and sharing ideas and collaborating would even sign up for an event like this in the first place. So you're already getting sort of a curated event, but then to curate it even more down to a certain like segment, say a certain kind of founder, or maybe it's a certain I'm organizing an event for GTM, sales and marketing people. If you can really, concentrate to just one type, and then that can create like an enormous amount of value for if you have some kind of I mean, if you're looking for a sponsor or if you're trying to achieve something in that space, that segment that you gathered into the room. So yeah, definitely, I've noticed the same thing that to be able to get a certain type of people in a room is very powerful.
Yeah.
Um, and did you Are there is there anyone that you're partnering with? I guess probably venues, right? Any co-founders or anything else?
Um, I did get help from like some early mentors in the early days, but it's mainly me running Borderless. We recently started like thinking about building out like a more proper team as we're growing. But for the past year, it was mainly me. Yeah.
Got it. And what's the do you plan Borderless to be like a for-profit company, not for profit? And if it's for profit, what's the main business model that you would pursue?
It's actually a for-profit company. We actually
For profit, yeah.
profitable. Our main business model comes from like, partnering with partners that believes in supporting the founders and bringing the founders together. And so we work with a lot of, folks in the ecosystem to make these like gatherings happen. And
Yeah,
that's kind of how also because we don't have the membership type model where you charge like the
right.
founder to join, but more so we get the support from the partners in order to make these happen and bring the founders together.
And what's ultimately your vision for the company? Do you see it just I know and you sort of touched on this before, but is it just to grow and build a network? Is there a certain like software component to it that you're going to add to supplement the events?
Yeah. Yeah, we building a curated infrastructure where founders, operators, and investors come together, not just to network, but also to genuinely support each other as they build the next generation of company. So I mean, hosting events, and especially intentional curated events, is one part of it where the focus isn't the scale, but it's more like the alignment and who is in the room and
Yeah.
why. And our long-term vision is actually much bigger than just like hosting event. I think Borderless is evolving into something I think of as if you check our website, we literally just updated all the informations. We want to build more on infrastructure for ambitious founders. So it's kind of like a trusted circle where, the builders they can access the relationship, the knowledge, the capital in a way that that few humans and intentional. We actually having a few couple of like special project that we that are in the making for the founders because I think after expanding to San Francisco we can definitely see a huge difference between the two ecosystem or like the two communities. So we want to double down on what is lacking in each of the ecosystem. And yeah, so we have a couple of exciting initiatives coming up. But I think from our website, I think we just launched we haven't announced it yet, but like we just launched like two tiers. One is like more like for founding members, mainly just a group of my very close founder friends who building very legit companies. And then there's like another thing, it's called more like a fellowship where we want to nurture like the young talents and those folks that's still, getting into it. So there are like two group that we're building out. And then we like for each group, we will have like different, like Tyler initiatives or in the yeah, or like events or things that are going on for each group. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And are you focusing on any stage of startup? I mean, would you consider it to be your program to be like an incubator, or is it more like for any startup along the way, just a toolbox of resources and
Yeah.
connections that they can
No,
tap into?
we're not an incubator. I support all the incubator out there. I think
Yeah,
there are already a lot of great incubators. I think I'm not leaning towards going into building Borderless as an incubator, but
yeah,
just like a more like a infrastructure. As I said, like there's certain things I cannot review yet.
yeah.
But
No problem at all. Yeah,
but we want to build more of like a an ecosystem where folks they can actually go and meet other people in similar states. I'll give you an example. There we host, if you see like we host different types of like events, breakfast, bowling, dinners, whatever, right? um
yeah.
every room is actually very different. Sometimes the room is like one room is more like just seat stage focus, and sometimes the room is more like Serie A. Last time we hosted a dinner that's more like Serie A focus,
Okay.
and then you will have rooms where it's more like free seat and seat. So it's very um very much depends. And last time when I literally just last week I was in SF, we hosted three breakfasts back to back, like 3 days in a row. But three rooms are so different. Well, the first one was like for AI builders, and then the
Okay.
second one was for seat stay, those that raise the seat round, ideally. And then the third one is more like B2B side. So it's like very different theme, different focus. So, you know, and then one time in New York, we hosted like a bowling, but more geared toward like healthcare founders. So it's we try to curate the group based on the stage, based on the industry that they're in. We try to make sure that even if it's like a industry agnostic event, then when the folks came into my event, like we usually sit folks like intentionally too, but also give them some time to like connect with everyone in the room. Um, and yeah, and then like we try to be super intentional with every single detail that we put into the events. Um, yeah, so hope that answer your questions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what would you say? I mean, so are you based out of New York City, or I guess yeah, you're based out of New York, and are you switching to San Francisco, or no? Is it still going to be centered out of New York City?
So I'm based in New York, but I go to San Francisco every month.
Oh wow, okay, yeah,
Yeah, so we go, I intentionally go once a month in the beginning of every month.
nice,
And we expanded to San Francisco around October last year. And then
yeah,
we noticed there, as you like, as a lot of people said, there's a lot of maturity in the San Francisco area. So that's how I started in New York and wanted to build out the New York community. And so when I went to San Francisco, I noticed a huge difference between the two. Even in San Francisco, it's very concentrated, but there's still demand in terms of like curated events. And then in terms of like New York, like the community is still growing, and I think there's a lot of untapped potential. Then, that's how like you feel like in New York is growing, but then sometimes it's still scattering a little bit. People go to event, but there's no place for you to hold people together, right? Except unless you go to like a social club, but that is still very, very fairly new. So I think like so we go once a month to San Francisco, and I think I've got a lot of learnings by making these trips, because then you see like what New York community needs and what you can build out more, and then versus like vice versa with the San Francisco community, what else can you do, and what to not double down on, right? So I think that it was it's pretty helpful. Yeah.
yeah. And how do you see this scaling? So I mean, if you have events in New York and San Francisco, okay, you're flying every month to San Francisco. But if you start to have them in say Boston and another city, is it what do you think you'll do? Will you hire employees or just get people to that maybe have some interest in hosting the event and host for you?
Yeah, we probably would have like like teams running events if we expand more into like
Yeah.
other areas. We did think about like going into other cities, but I'd rather take small step and make sure that we build
Yeah.
like a foundations in the trust within the community before expanding. Like, I think my philosophy is that you focus on the quality over the quantity, and then eventually, like when you expand, like the ground is like much more, certain, and then the trust is there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. And when you're trying to grow that quality audience, is there a certain way that you target new people to bring into the network? Like whether it's just going to other networking events and finding people, in person or running advertisements, creating maybe content that brings people in.
Like, you mean like, do I have anyone helping me?
Or no, I meant like for yourself, like how do you plan to actually grow the community? Is it by like content creation? Like how do you make people aware of the events and interested in going?
These days we get a lot of inbound actually. And usually like I would also personally invite the founder that I think would be a perfect fit for the events.
Yeah,
These days we get like also a lot of like, inbounds, and we also partner with a lot of other community builders and newsletter. We also have our own newsletter. So that's and definitely I think when I started, I was never a media person. My first company, I had a media team. They did everything for me. So this was
uh,
like a lot of good learnings when I started
yeah,
working again. You were like what I and then what I think like at the time I was like I just focus on the quality, but then
right.
you realize distribution is also another very important thing these days. So I think like that's what we do this year. We rebranded to match with our visions. And then I actually we like filming more content with like founders, like in like our newsletter sections. We just pushed out today with like a founder. He brought his company from zero to IPO. And so we just
Yeah.
have a lot of these conversations, try to also build out like mainly now we like active on LinkedIn, but trying to also get into some other platforms as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely I mean there are many different ways that you can, go about. It's always surprising to me that like say I've exhausted one version of bringing people into events or to try out a product. There can be like entirely different ways of accessing people that it's like there's a whole new audience, and so I'm always curious about those different ways to access. I know just to return the favor and share one that I've found is useful to you. So Facebook groups. If you go to specific Facebook groups and then post like
Really?
yeah
People use
you can
Facebook.
post there's a lot of so for example I know I was creating like a health tech product for dentists, and so in a dental insurance Facebook group I had trouble getting dentists any other place, go knocking on doors, emailing, calling. I couldn't get a hold of them, but post one post in that Facebook group and like 30 people respond. So it's always amazing how there's these different sources, different channels that just access an entirely different audience.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I'm not like on Facebook at all. So
Yeah, I don't use it recreationally, but for business. Like there's a lot of people starting to host events. Do you feel, I'm one of them, you're one of them, and we see other people. Do you feel at any point will it get saturated, or do you think this is the future, it's just the beginning and or something else? Yeah.
I think it's just the beginning, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's why you see more and more people start hosting events also because they realize there's so many AI taught these days and
Yeah.
what is even real, right? So then so many people started hosting events. I think before the community aspect is just like a lot of people they think it's just like a nice to have. Okay, so once in a
Right.
while some like events and then I'll meet some people. But I think like these days with everything's going on with the world, having community is more becoming more and more important, especially these days when you get at least like 100 or 10 like cold email from different agencies or like service, and then
Yeah.
you just don't know what is real, what is not. Most of them are mainly AI generated. So for people to actually meet and connect and also make real business, the best way is to be in person, right? The best way is to
Yeah.
put people together in the room where they can actually discuss like face to face and build that connections. And that what makes it go a long way. And I think it's very, very new. Um, I would say in the next like 5 to 10 years, it's gonna be like booming in terms of like the
Yeah.
community. I would call it, I wrote up like a little bit about this, but I would call it like community economies because like still a lot of people are still
Yeah.
figuring out if I build a community, how do I sustain on building a community? And how do I convince other partners or like other folks that it's gonna work or like it's a high quality. I think also you have to find your niche, like how you bring the values to the people that you serve. And once you build that trust of like that layer of trust, then people will keep coming back to you, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, there's absolutely a big difference of meeting in person versus if someone just messages you on LinkedIn and you don't just something about all the ways that our human mind is triggered by the cues of a in-person conversation. It just etches that in your mind, and so if that person were to reach out to you again, or if you reach out to them, it's much more likely that you guys will pick things back up, which is big for yeah, for many different businesses, and of course, if you're, try a startup trying to hire talent, or if you're a B2B business trying to sell to people, if you met in person, I mean, B2B, you have to meet someone in person because a lot of the items are bigger ticket items, like over $1,000, and so no one's going to go online and click a button to pay that much money. So you have to have some kind of in-person um, contact so that you can trust, okay, this is a real person, not AI or something, before I spend like $5,000 on some B2B purchase. So yeah, it definitely makes a huge difference to have that in-person
Yeah. Even
trust.
with some of the things that I outsource right now, with Borderless, I also just started working with my founder friends that offer that service because I
Yeah,
built that. We met at my events, and then I know how high quality their work are and how good they are as a founder.
yeah,
So I would automatically go to them versus checking out like a random cold email that I don't know the person behind it, right? So I think that's a
right.
huge difference. Like, and most of like all of the services right now that I'm outsourcing for like, in the back end for Borderless, it's literally with all of my founder friends that
Yeah,
met at my events. And I believe they building some of the best companies, and they help me out. And I think I would rather trust them and working with them than working with a random email. Don't get me wrong, like random
yeah,
email can also like be a hit or miss. I think it's you need to like get to like a level of personalizations, but I still think these days it's really tough to uh be like a go-to-market as like like an email cold outreach. LinkedIn would
yeah.
might be work to schedule like a conversation. Most of the time it works for me on LinkedIn. I barely email people these days. Unless it's like we're
Yeah.
already in the progress of like talking, the process of like doing work together. Most of the time we communicate a lot on, social, because it's also a way for them to see your work and what you've done. Yeah.
Yeah, in this kind of ad economy, we've had these hundreds of billion-dollar companies, Google, Facebook, basically just ad companies, and yeah, they're basically just the more that you can get. I mean, we have all these metrics like cost per click, just basically the success rate for if you reach out to someone or if you broadcast something that you can create some connection there and some transactions. So if you can make the success rate very high because you met someone in person. I mean, clearly that's got to be valuable because these hundreds of billion-dollar companies are almost doing a much much less of a connection by just posting ads and seeing who happens to or less efficient form of connecting with people by just posting ads. And there's millions of people that ad's irrelevant to. But like you said, when you reach out directly to someone that you've already met and you know their background, then that's like so much more efficient than just broadcasting ads
Yeah.
everywhere.
And I also think like it's the best way to sell is to not sell. Like when you try to, nobody like to be sold too, right? Like if
Right.
someone
Yes. Yeah.
like, hey Brandon, do you want to use like I would not feel
Yeah.
comfortable because I was like, okay, you're trying to sell me. It's not like you're trying.
Exactly.
And I think hosting curated events, it removed that layers because it's a space that people can actually come and just chat without. Even when I work with partner, I don't let them sell at my events because
Yeah.
I think like the best sale would happen, or the best deal would happen when you put people together in the room, that they can actually just become friends, or they can actually just build another great connections that they were like, let's chat more because I'm so interested in what you're building.
Yeah.
And it's happened to me the same thing with, as I said, with the founders I'm working with. I just like when I think about, okay, I kind of need it now. So I just like think about who I should reach out to. So then I just like send them a text and be like, hey, like, do you know any of this? They never try to sell to me. So I think like it's when it's not transactional, that's where a lot of real things happens and nobody likes to be sold to. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And as soon as someone you can tell you pick up on that pattern of someone trying to sell you something, you
Mhm.
switch your mindset, right? You're in a defensive mode. You don't want to be, you don't want them to take your money. And if
Yeah.
we're event hosts and we have people showing up and we're putting them in that mindset, well, that's not an enjoyable experience to be in that mindset, right? Versus a social one. And so, what incentive would there be to keep coming to events if that's the way they're going with the feel? So, from that perspective too, it doesn't create a good experience for the attendees.
I agree.
And what would you say? What's been maybe some of the biggest challenges, the biggest challenge that you faced so far with growing Borderless?
When I started, I think like it's not about the work itself, but I think it's more about like the emotional roller coaster that you go through
Yes,
up to now. I mean,
absolutely.
probably also uh feel it when like you build all these like, things for yourself. And I think like that was really, one of the, when I was building before, it was very different because I would say I was really young, and I was
Yeah,
also at home. I don't think about like how to make this work financially and business model wise, rather than just like I'm building out for fun, right? But then
right.
when you moved here, and then like especially with like the pressure of like after you quit your job, and then I'm still on my visa. So then it was like the pressure of like how to make this work. And then, so it's like it was definitely a lot of roller coaster going through that. And you're constantly making a lot of decisions without knowing whether they're gonna be the right one or not. So in the beginning, there was 1 month I was so lost and I don't
Yeah,
know. Like I see the signal, but I don't know how it's gonna look like. So I
yeah,
think around December 2024,
yeah.
after I just got rejected a lot. And then somebody told me it's gonna work. It's got rejected a lot. So there were 1 month. I literally just sat at home and I just watched Netflix. I think like I could never forget that month. I just
Yeah,
a bunch of like movies, shows,
right.
Netflix, because then it's kind of make you forget the problem that you are having. And done it for a month. And I was like, this is not good. Like I have to do something. I remember I called my parents at like 5 a.m. and just cried to them, like, I don't know what's going on. But I think that's also then I started um going to this coffee shop next to where I live. And I just like, I just told myself as long as I show up for myself, that's all that matters. And at least just get myself out of the house. So then I started going to this coffee shop at 8 a.m. every single day. And I would just sit there. And that's small action changed so much. And that's how it's helped me grow Borderless to where it is today. I think it's all about like the internal like motivations and like the resilient. I think like when people are like so close to giving up, that's where
Yeah,
they will see success. But then because like when you're at the lowest point, the only way to go up is
right.
no, there's nothing you can get, there nothing can be worse than this, right? So I
Yeah,
was like, okay, I'm gonna give myself a few months. And then I just started going to that coffee shop. Um, and they even all the staff that just remember who I am because I just go there way too often. Uh,
yeah,
but that really helped for 3 months in a row. I make a tons of progress with Borderless, and like you meet the people around there. And I was very fortunate. I met like this incredible group of people who lived around the area too, and they also happen to be founders or people building very cool things. So that's really helps, and you have the support system. And then I went to this like female founder dinners who's also really helped me a ton because they were all ex-consultant. So I joined this group and we just like get dinner once a month. And but there, like you don't, you just talk about it's you are like friends. So I think a lot of times it's made me realize, oh, I'm not going through this alone. Like a lot of people are also going through it. And then, you have the people who going through similar things that understand what you're going through, and that's really helps. So I think those experience combined really taught me like resilience and patience. And again, the lessons always come back to the same thing, like keep showing up and be consistent. Like consistency is key. And I was like, I told myself at the time, I was like, as long as I host one curated event per month, then
Yeah.
that, you know, as a way to start, then that's good.
Yeah, it's progress. Right.
Yeah, even if I'm not making enough money or I'm making enough money, whatever, as long as I have to do it once a month because you gotta keep the momentum going. So I think that's kind of how it got me out of the chain in the mindset and it's got me out of that slum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hard to describe it, or to convey to people that haven't tried to start a company just how much of a mental battle it really is. The volatility and like anything, it's from the outside and you hear about it, it's like, oh, sure, that's tough. I get how it'd be tough to start a company, but it's always so different actually doing it and actually being
It
in it. 'Cause
is.
everything feels so much more real, and you're basically, yeah, yeah, it's a large section of your life that you're betting on this, whatever venture you're taking. So it's a huge bet to take. But like you said, I mean, if you can follow that kind of path where you're your source of motivation is just because you enjoy doing this, like you did when you're younger, then it makes it a lot easier. And I think that part of that maybe you mentioned was just expectations. Like if you have all these expectations that it needs to be you need to be making like whatever amount of money. If you expectations are somewhat of a burden, of a mental burden, because that
Yeah.
the further you are from them, then the more
Yeah.
pressure that is. And so you almost want to you don't want to have them be like absolutely nothing, no expectations. But if they're too high, then you put a lot of stress on yourself. And so it's good
Yeah.
to keep them under control. And if you're in the mindset where, okay, as long as I make enough money, just at first to pay my bills, and you get to that point. Well,
Yeah.
once you get to that point, you can then, bump up your expectations and try to grow it from there.
Yeah.
But up until that point, you'll feel a lot less pressure if you're just happy with, okay, if I pay my bills, then I'll be doing what I love and I'll be happy.
Yeah. I think it's always important to dream and think big
Yeah.
because and then break it down to how you get there. I think
Right.
I think at the time I was is still in like the corporate mindset a little bit that like okay you went through so much to get to where you were and were making good money and you're
Yeah.
enjoying your life and then to going to like the startup life
Yeah.
and then you're starting something on your own. And I think that was like sometimes it's kind of like the guilt that you feel like, am I disappointing my family? Like,
Yeah.
they so like concerned about like how am I gonna do it and things like that. You know what I mean? But deep down, I know that like I'm doing something like deep down, you just know that like is you building something that is just gonna take a little bit of times and as long as you get through that period. And I think that was that was one period that I found myself like getting through it and then I'm glad I went through it because it's really taught me like again like stay consistent is very important and don't give up before way too early. Yeah, I think a lot of people give up pretty early still. Even though you see so many founders with like a lot of win stories on like shows, but I think we if you look like further, there's like majority of companies, like a lot of people that give up pretty quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can say for sure it's a guarantee that if you do give up, then you won't do it. So certainly you have to not give up. So so
Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely true.
I told myself like, okay, what's the worst situation, right? The worst situation is I'm gonna go and find a job. That's the worst
Right.
situation.
It's not a But it's so tough to convince yourself of that. Like it's one thing to know it and realize that that makes sense, right? I can always get a job, but it's another thing to feel that. And it's tough to feel that when you see your friends progressing in their careers and you feel like you're falling behind, right? And it's
Mm.
we are it can be very isolating to be an entrepreneur, and we're very social creatures, right? And so if we feel like we're sort of slipping behind the pack because we're taking this extra time without much
Yeah,
benefit in the beginning, it feels like we're falling behind, but it is just this sort of long beginning period until you start to scale things up, and then ideally you can really scale it up even more than if you tried to uh
yeah, yeah,
do better
totally.
than if you try to work a job.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And then like once you hit like one milestone, like you like think about the next one. I think that's like
Yeah.
the founder journey. So that's why when I host event, I always write every founder like a handwritten note, just because
Oh, nice.
I feel like people just, it's just to appreciate them and then tell them like, I love what they're building and they, sometimes founders we don't get a lot of compliments. I think you don't get a lot of it's a lot of
Yeah.
internal validations, you know what I mean?
Right, right. Not until you raise 5 million, $10 million, then you'll get it. But then before that, there's not much. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say are what's like the most valuable piece of advice or pieces of advice that you could give to an entrepreneur that's starting out to save them a lot of time, to save them a lot of painstaking trouble?
I would say like be consistent. I say many,
Yeah.
many times. And I think consistency is key. Like if you do a little bit every day, it will lead to big progress. And I think most of the time we see the big picture and we want to get there as fast as we can. But then, a lot of time when you figure out what to do next, then people miss like the concept that you just gotta do even one small thing during the day. That's like every day that will lead you to, the bigger thing that you wanted to achieve. And I think like another thing though is like take care of yourself. I think it's really
Yeah,
important to have a good support system. I
I agree.
honestly personally would not think that I could get to where I am today if I don't have a good support system. I'm very fortunate that even though how much pressure or like, stress that I went through, I still am very grateful that I have the best family and friends around me, and also even with like founder friends. And then when I meet other founder friends, they became my friends, and we became
Yeah.
like a better support system for each other. But I think just try to take care of yourself. I think sometimes when we need help, we don't know that we need help, or we scared of asking for help, and people wouldn't know, and or we think that this is such a small thing. Why would I ask for help? Then afraid of being judged. And I would say like just reach out for help and for advice, because I think that's you don't have to take it, but sometimes it really makes you feel much better because it's give you some sort of directions or things that people went through, and you know that you can get through it. And I think like yeah, and I think that's like the mental mindset is really important. Just take care of yourself, like mentally, um, and physically. I try to remind myself as well. Sometimes you just now these days for us, it's more like I'm running out of times. I'm burning out sometimes a little bit. So I try to like find the balance, but yeah, stay consistent, very important. Ask for help, and yeah, and also live your life.
Yeah, it's definitely important to actually enjoy yourself. I mean, what's the point of any of this if we're just going to, we have one life to live. If you're not going to enjoy it, then why even do this? So that
Yeah,
definitely makes sense, and you'll be able to sustain yourself more if you're feeling good too. If you're feeling terrible every day, how much tougher will it be to be
yeah,
consistent because it's like it's a punishment every day versus if you're feeling good, it's a reward every day. So and
yeah,
with the consistency, I agree on that point too, because it's like when you start a company, there's this huge amount of work that will need to be done. If you skip days and you wait, then down the road you're going to have far too much work for like far too short period of time. So
yeah,
if you're consistent, basically what you're doing is that you're breaking that work up day to day rather than having to crunch and do it all at once. And so
Exactly.
um, it's a lot easier to be persistent when you're not trying to do some whole big pile of work all at once versus just doing it day by day. So it almost kind of yeah, it makes it easier to be persistent when you're consistent like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Amy, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. Thanks so much for joining me on the on my startup podcast. And yeah, we'll have to I'll come to one of your networking events or vice versa. And yeah, looking forward to seeing where things
Oh,
go.
thank you for having me. And obviously, let me know if you need anything. Would love to meet in person at some point. But this has been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Thanks.